Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Her Story podcast presented by Chamber Fayetteville and produced by Be Freaking Awesome. I'm one of your hosts, Amy Kinnison, and today we are joined by Lauren Allen. Lauren, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I am super excited to get to jump into this conversation. But before we do, for people who may not have had the chance to meet you yet, can you give us like 30 to 60 seconds? Tell us who you are and the kinds of work that you're involved with.
Yeah, my name is Lauren Allen. Currently, I work with CASA of Northwest Arkansas as the Community and Volunteer Engagement Coordinator. I'm originally from East Tennessee and ended up in Arkansas because I went to Hendrix College in Conway and then moved up to Fayetteville afterwards and been here ever since. I've gotten connected to the chamber in the last year through participating in Leadership Fayetteville, which has sort of exposed me to more to what it's like living in Fayetteville and what people here care about. And so now I'm just let's see, working at CASA and, I don't know what else.
Yeah, that's great. No, I would love to hear a little bit more if you don't mind. Tell us about Leadership Fayetteville and what your experience with this program has been. And I don't know, maybe somebody doesn't know what it is. And like, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so Leadership Fayetteville is a year-long cohort through the chamber. I applied last early summer, and I wanna say applications open in June, so it's coming around again, but, we meet monthly and basically explore various topics throughout the city, so we've done Social Services Day, which sort of took us to places like the Northwest Arkansas Food Bank, Peace at Home Women's Shelter. We've done Economic Development Day, which I have to say was much more fascinating than I had expected as someone who's not an economist. We did a trip to Little Rock and kind of learned more about state government and what that looks like and how it's connected to Northwest Arkansas. So, we're meeting monthly and doing all these things, getting more connected in the community, but we're also the cohort is around 30 professionals, and so making the connections there too, learning what other people around my age are doing in Fayetteville and how it's kind of all connected. I think it's Leadership Fayetteville as a whole has definitely made me look at Northwest Arkansas as much obviously, I knew it was much bigger than me alone, but
Yeah.
hearing what other people are doing in completely different fields than me, there are classmates who are in banking, who are in construction, who own their own businesses, there's lawyers, and so it's been really cool to kind of hear what life is like for other people in our area and kind of be exposed to all different areas of the city for sure.
I love that. I got to do Leadership Fayetteville a few years ago. I was in class 35, and
Mhm.
I am a born and raised Fayettevillean, and I thought for sure there would be nothing new that I would learn. And over and over again was learning so many new things. And so I think it's such a great program to I love the way you put that, that like just see that things are bigger than you and
Mhm.
bigger than you might realize or notice within things. So that's really cool. Thanks for sharing with us. Sort of in this same vein of things, you are somebody who has moved into the area. What do you think it is about Fayetteville that sort of draws people in? If you could identify some of the secret sauce or special ingredients, what do you think makes Fayetteville so attractive?
I'm not sure that I can answer what draws people in because to be honest, I followed my boyfriend here.
Okay.
And so that was my draw.
Love. Mhm.
Yes, love drew me here. Now we're getting married, so it worked. However,
Congratulations.
thank you. I think I can speak more on what keeps people here. Having moved to Fayetteville from a different part of Arkansas, having lived in Central Arkansas first, I can say that Arkansans, but especially Northwest Arkansans, I think do a really good job of just thinking for themselves. Like, there people here in Fayetteville especially are very unique, and while the city itself may lean politically one way or another, I think that people here really form their opinions independently, and, like, there's almost this grittiness, especially to the state, that it's like we take care of our own, that we don't wait for other people to come in and help us, and I think I see that a lot in Fayetteville in the community sense because people here are very quick to stand up for one another. I remember last year, and this is still ongoing, but when SNAP was halted during the government shutdown, the city really came together very quickly to supplement Northwest Arkansas Food Bank, food pantries, just help their neighbors. And I don't think that that is a unique thing that happened just because there was this national ongoing crisis. I think that that is just so true to who and what Fayetteville is. We're a city that looks out for one another. And so definitely that has kept me here because I don't think I've lived in a lot of places. I moved around a lot, but I don't think I've ever lived anywhere, nor will I ever live anywhere again where people are just so cognizant of what their neighbors are going through and so willing to be not just to talk about it, but to be the person who steps up and does something about it.
That's really cool. And I love that perspective that because you've been other places, it's not you're speaking from a place of experience of, "No,
Mhm.
no, I can compare and contrast and can tell you from my lived experience, this is different."
For sure.
I find myself taking a lot of things for granted, having been I've only lived in 1 zip code my entire life. Excluding the 4 years I was at U of A, which I lived in a different zip code within the same city, but still basically 1 zip code, and I find so many things that I take for granted. For example, I don't know why everybody gets so excited about the trees. Don't all trees turn into rainbows in the fall? Isn't that what happens everywhere? And it does not. Who would have
Um,
thought? Do you see this showing up in your work at all, or is that a little bit different? Because I know with CASA, there's a lot of you're working with a little bit more vulnerable populations at times,
mhm.
and how does that show up for you at work?
Yeah, I think it shows up very similarly at work, that concept of people wanting to help one another. And even as someone who hasn't lived here my whole life, it can be easy to take for granted that like we at CASA, we have 300, usually a little bit more active annual volunteers. And
Wow.
that's incredible. It's a large amount of people who are not only volunteering their time, but doing it consistently. So to be a CASA volunteer, the expectation is that you're working 10 to 15 hours a month in that role. It's not a full-time job, but it's a lot more than the
Yeah.
typical volunteer opportunity. And the fact that we have 300 people willing to do that and go above and beyond, giving so much more than just their time, but are also giving their heart to kids who are in foster care. We of course, always want to make sure every child has a volunteer, and so there's
Mhm.
always a bit more of a push to really recruit, but my job being recruiting, I think I have an easier time here than I would somewhere else getting people to, buy into our mission and to truly understand why it is that we want every child in foster care to have an advocate in their corner, and so, yeah, we have an amazing volunteer pool, and I think to the credit to that is how strong of a community Northwest Arkansas has.
That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that, and I do think that I don't know that a lot of people realize just how well supported, our nonprofits really are, and the people they show up really big, so
Yes. Yeah, we're really lucky to have the community we have. It's definitely unique, I would say the corporate environment, the community we have up here is just the nonprofits here are definitely we're lucky to have the community that we do.
I love it. Okay, I wanna pivot a little bit and talk more about your journey within work. Have there was there like a moment that you felt like things really changed? Was it, maybe a phone call or an opportunity, something that really shifted things that pointed you to where you are now?
My first internship in college was with Rise House, which is a domestic violence shelter in Conway, Arkansas. And I was doing an advocacy internship, and this is typical of a lot of nonprofits, not necessarily up here, but when you're an intern, you're really treated like any other employee at a nonprofit
Mhm.
because your labor is genuinely needed. And
Right.
so that was definitely the case at the shelter. And I quickly, you know, was working there as if I was being paid to work there and was answering hotline calls and was doing
Oh,
crisis
wow.
intervention and casework. And so I think having the opportunity to be thrown into such an intense, you know, job like that as an undergraduate college student really made me realize that there are so many ways to help people, and also the people you're helping are gonna be so at the shelter, it's a domestic violence shelter, and so you would think people are escaping violent situations, which is true, but that was never the only problem that they were facing, and that was
Mm.
really impactful to me. That I think a lot of times we view societal problems as black and white, like, the issue is that this person was in an abusive relationship. Yes, and they're experiencing homelessness and systemic poverty, and so I think being faced with that so young really helped me realize that when we're working to solve one issue, we can't just focus on that one issue. We have to look at the whole picture. We can't address the foster care system without addressing poverty or substance misuse, all of these things and more. And so that was a really important lesson to me early on in my career. And I ended up working at the shelter for 2 more years as a paid staff member, and so I think the lessons that I learned there, I still carry with me today for sure, even as I'm not in a role now that is directly client facing. I think it helps me bring that perspective to the recruitment work that I do, that we're not just advocating for kids in foster care, we're advocating for their parents too. We're advocating for the whole family to be able to experience a different reality and a better reality.
That is really cool, and I think it is a lesson that is so true in so many things that we wanna try focus on, like, what's this one teeny tiny little thing that may not be a teeny tiny thing, still might be a
Mhm.
really big thing. We're all interconnected, and within our community, we're interconnected, and businesses rely on other businesses and rely on other businesses in order to do well, and so I love that perspective because it's universal, really. It is not only true in the nonprofit world, it is also true for every human being that we're talking with, so good. Within all of that, and that we are complex human beings, how do you personally find yourself navigating, like, work-life balance? And especially, there's a lot more heaviness that I think can come within the nonprofit work, and there's a risk of burnout for that.
Mhm.
How do you personally navigate those things, or what advice would you give to others who are trying to navigate that?
Yeah, I definitely struggled more with work-life balance when I was earlier in my career. I'm still pretty early, and I think that's something a lot of people experience. I had a hard time, not checking emails, not checking, especially at the shelter, not checking the work chat to see what new crisis was happening. Like, now I have really strict rules for myself about having my work email on my phone. I have it on there, but I don't have notifications on, and I, like, lock it down on the weekends and after hours. I've also noticed that when I spend more time doing my hobbies, outside of work hours, that really helps too. It gives me something to look forward to when I'm not working, and just a good outlet for expression. I love to play guitar and sing, and I love the outdoors. So doing all of those things on my own time is helpful and leaves me, you know, going back into work feeling refreshed. But I think if you're in the wrong role, there's only so much self care you can do. It's not going to fix the fact that you're in the wrong role. And so being in a job that I really like has helped with that tremendously as well. So, I don't think I've had the Sunday scaries since I started working at CASA, which is awesome. I still, of course, like every person, the weekend's over too quickly sometimes, but I used to get this pit in my stomach, like, "Oh gosh, what am I gonna go into tomorrow?" And I don't get that anymore. So sometimes you can do a lot of internal work, but if your external factors aren't lining up, there's only so much you can do.
But I also think it's a good point to draw attention that even when you have a job you love, it is still really important to have strict rules for yourself, and it is still
Mhm.
really important to hold that boundary in that space so that it doesn't turn into one of those situations that is now bled over and taking over all of your life, and burnout is the reality you're facing. So, I just wanna note for other people, hear what Lauren is saying, that even when you have a job you love, it is still good to have strong boundaries, not
Totally.
just when it's a bad situation.
Yeah, and I think honestly, like, the biggest lie people say about work is that if you have a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't think that's true. I think even if you love your job, you're still working undeniably. And so I think, I'm lucky, I think, to be in the generation that I am, where we're sort of de-emphasizing this work is the center of our lives thing. I'm someone who's very driven by work. I love what I do. I'm passionate about advancing, and I love my time off. I love, spending time doing things that I genuinely enjoy outside of work. And I think it's important to be honest with yourself about that and to, have things you love outside of work, even if you love your job.
I love that. So I want us to we're doing a little bit of time traveling here. You are sitting in the room on June 16th at the Women of All Generations event. The panel has women, some who have been building their careers since before you were even born. Is there a question that you would like to ask them if you could ask something?
Mm. I think I would want to know how they balance it all, how, especially as you're trying to advance, how do you ensure that you're leaving time for the people in your life that you care about outside of work?
It's a good question. I would also
Mm.
like to know that because, whew, man, sometimes I'm like, I don't know if all of us have the same 24 hours in a day, but
Right. And even if
yeah,
you adhere to the strict 9 to 5, if you've worked very hard in a day, you get home, you don't have the same energy you would if you
right.
were off that day and it's past 5 o'clock, So,
Exactly. Okay. One of the last questions that I really like to ask is what are your thoughts on the glass ceiling, particularly within your industry? Do you feel like it's something that's still there
mhm.
or still have to face? What do you think?
Well, in my industry, you know, nonprofit is typically more dominated by women than men, just statistically speaking. So, I'm not sure exactly how it shows up there. That being said, an interesting study, and I can't tell you the name of it right now. It was looking at specifically advocacy centers, and even though the majority of the employees were women, the majority of the executive directors were still men. And so I saw that last year, and that definitely struck me. It's not true at CASA. We are a majority female organization, and our executive director is a woman. That being said, thinking outside of my role, I do think the glass ceiling still exists, and I think it shows up in sort of the stigma that exists for working women of trying to balance it all. Um, I think that when a man works 60-hour weeks to advance in his field, it's a great thing, and, he has his wife at home to take care of the home stuff. When a woman does that, even if she has a very supportive partner by her side, I don't think it's looked at the same way. I think there's still an expectation that women can do it all, that we can go to work, we can get promoted, we can raise a family, have a perfect marriage, all of that. And I think, again, thanks because I'm in Gen Z, I think that that is going away, hopefully, in my generation. I don't think it exists as much. I think it's still there. But I think people in my age group are much more ready to call that out when they see it. Not to say that older people aren't doing that. Plenty of older folks and people, millennials, Gen X, all of that are also ready to call that out. But I just think my generation has a very outspoken quality that I'm really happy to be a part of.
I think that's absolutely true. As a millennial myself, occasionally I feel like Gen Z is sort of like our kid sibling. And I'll be like, hey, like, you're being so mean to me. But then if anybody else is trying to be mean to you, I'm like, no, no, that is my sibling. You cannot be mean to
Yeah.
them. But I definitely really appreciate that about Gen Z is that you guys are not afraid to call things out like you see it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a
Yeah.
good way of being.
Also, it's weird because Gen Z is a big age group, but I feel there's such a distinction between my part of Gen Z that, like, graduated high school before COVID, and then the kids that were still in school. I don't know, maybe they'll be completely different, but at least for my segment of the generation, I think we're doing mostly pretty well on that part.
I think that I could see generationally, like, there'll be, like, a little subsect of,
Yeah.
did you graduate before 2020 or 2020 and after?
Yeah, yeah.
Little divide, but, yeah, generation gaps are kind of, long ranges too. As you get older, they feel shorter, but
Mhm.
early on, you're like, "Wait, I'm in the same generation as somebody who's 16 right now?" Like, feels odd. Let's wrap up. I've got a couple of rapid fire questions for you, and then we'll sort of land the plane, if you will. So, first rapid fire, what job did you want when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, I wanted to be the president.
I love it. Hey, you still have
Yeah.
time. You're not, I
Oh,
assume
yeah.
you're not 35 yet, otherwise you
No,
wouldn't
I don't
be.
even qualify yet.
Yeah. So you have time still. Let's make it happen. Why not? Unless you don't want that anymore, and that's also totally fair.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I love it. All right, next one. Beach, mountains, city, or staycation?
Ooh, that's really hard. I'm gonna go city, but
Okay.
like, asterisk city that's near the mountains.
Okay. I like it. Wait, so like a Denver or like a Salt
Yeah,
Lake
yeah,
City or something like that?
something like that. You can do both.
Nice. I like it. All right. A bonus is hitting your bank account today. What is the first thing you're going to do with it?
I would definitely put most of it in savings because I'm saving to go to law school, so that would be great.
Nice.
And then maybe save a little bit, put a little bit aside to travel somewhere I've never been before.
I love it. That's a good answer. All right. Can you describe your work wardrobe in 3 words?
I would say my work wardrobe is casual, colorful, and comfortable.
I like
You're
it.
not seeing any
Casual,
of that today, though.
casual, comfortable, and colorful. Yeah, you got like black blazer on,
Brown. Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
great. Okay. Is there a goal that you have that you're really excited about? Maybe you haven't told anybody about, maybe you've not told a lot of people about that you'd be willing to share with us today?
Hmm. I think, one of my goals that has sort of always underpinned everything I've done is still to be more involved in policymaking, whatever that looks like, whether that be in an elected position or in my current role. I always am trying to see how we can think of things on a bigger scale, on a scale that impacts more people and how I can be a part of shaping what can help people.
I love that. That's a really good goal. I wish you a whole lot of luck and success with all of that because I feel like we just need more people helping to look out for those things. So that's amazing.
Thank you.
Lauren, thanks so much for being a part of this conversation today and for jumping in on the Her Story series. I've been glad to just get a chance to talk with you and get to know you a little bit more.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening. And until the next story, have a great day.